Hi, my name is Pastor Brook Mcbride of Hilltop United Methodist Church, and this is the fourth sermon in my sermon series called When I Fall. And it's based on the story of David and his fall from grace when he intentionally murdered Uriah the Hittite because he wanted to cover up an affair he was having with his wife. It's an interesting story because why is it in the Bible in a way? I mean, David was the king of Israel. He's kind of it as far as kings go in Israel. Why wouldn't they just not put that in the Bible? I mean, why have that moment, his worst moment, placed in the Bible? And it's a brutal story. But when I think about it, I think what the writers of Scripture, inspired by God, were trying to do was they were trying to kind of see the Bible not only as always good things, but as a mirror that we place up to ourselves and see how human beings sometimes are, and sometimes that's not pleasant. John Calvin talks about Scripture as a mirror in which we see both the good and the bad about human nature and our need for God's grace in the middle of it. When I think about a mirror, I'm reminded of a story that someone from a department store, a gal who works at a department store, told me. She was working in the department store and it was almost closing time, and this young man, about 23, 24, just married, came rushing into the department store looking for a gift. And he said, "Oh gosh, I'm so glad you're open. I forgot my wife's birthday and I want to get her the most expensive perfume you've got." And so the gal said, "Sure, we've got this beautiful bottle of perfume, and let me wrap it up." And she started wrapping it up, and finally he stopped her, and he said, "Now, how much is that perfume?" And she said, "Well, it's our most expensive. It's $200. And he said, $200? You got anything cheaper?" And she said, "Well, yeah, we've got some other stuff. How about this? About $100. And he said, "Oh, anything cheaper?" "Well, I got this. It's $50. And he said, "Just a little cheaper." And she said, "Well, this is the cheapest stuff we've got, $24.99. She started wrapping it up, and he said, "Well, wait a minute. You sure you don't have anything cheaper?" And she looked around, and she saw a little mirror on her desk, and she pulled the mirror and says, "Well," she said, take a look at this. This is the only thing that is any cheaper than that." And he looked at himself in the mirror, and he got the point, and he bought the most expensive perfume for his wife. Sometimes it's not easy looking at ourselves in the mirror. We have a lot of warts sometimes. It's a difficult thing. But there are other times when we look good, and we want to see ourselves in the mirror. I was at a family reunion about a month ago, and at that family reunion I just had this one little incident that I was able to be a part of that was so neat. I would have loved to have seen myself in the mirror. I had a picture of this moment. We were going to the beach. We were up in Idaho on this mountain lake, and we were up in the cabin in the mountains, and we were traveling to the beach, trying to get there on July 4th before all the crowd got there so we could stake our claim to a nice spot on the beach. And on the way, we were packed into the car, and I noticed a family close to us, or just on the road there, that were playing soccer together. And a little boy, 6 years old, was just having the greatest time kicking around, having so much fun. But he kicked the ball, and it went over the fence. And, we were on the mountain, so this ball just came tumbling down, and the poor little boy noticed that they weren't going to be able to retrieve that ball. It was probably gone for good. It kept rolling and rolling, and he was crying. And I just noticed that the ball was coming right towards our car. So I told everybody to stop, and I jumped out, and there was the ball. I was able to even catch it. And 5 minutes later, I got up to where they were and gave them the ball, and the little boy stopped crying, and the family was so thankful for all I had done there. I hadn't done much, but it made me feel good to do something good. When I got back in the car, my in-laws weren't too happy. They said, "Oh, we're going to miss the beach," but hey, that's the way it goes. It just felt good to do something good. There's other times, though, when we don't feel so good about ourselves. when the mistakes we make just can't be shed, and they cling to us like a leech clings to campers out Lake Poncet on their ankles. We can't shake them sometimes. It's hard to pull them off. I don't know if you're a Cub fan, but I follow the Cubs, and if you know about Cub lore, they haven't won the pennant and gone to the World Series since 1945. But about 8 years ago, when they had Sammy Sosa, the great home run hitter, and they had some wonderful pitchers and some great players, they almost got there. They're playing the Florida Marlins 8 years ago, and it was the 8th inning of the 6th game, and the Cubs were ahead in the series 3-2, and they're winning the game 3-0. Things looked very good for the Cubs. And one of the Florida Marlins hit a foul ball, and if they would have caught that ball, it was getting close to the bleachers, but if Moses Alou would have been able to catch that ball, the inning would have been over, and they would have been in the 9th inning, and I think they would have won that game. Most people do. But as he ran over to to catch that fly ball, Steve Bartman, who was a spectator, a great Cubs fan, also saw that fly ball, and he wanted to catch it. And he reached up also to catch it. And his glove bumped into Moses' Alou glove, and the ball dropped. And the inning didn't get over. And the next play, the Marlins hit a nice hit before the inning was over. The Cubs were behind 8-3, and they lost that game. And they lost the pennant. And they haven't been back since. And poor Steve Bartman, who was a great Cubs fan, hasn't been able to go back to a Cubs game because he's forever marked as the guy who prevented the curse from being broken. He was the GOAT. And sometimes we're like that. And what do we do when that moment in our life, that one moment where we made a mistake, and sometimes we've made it innocently, and other times, like David, we did it intentionally. What do we do? How do we shake that? How do we get over that? That's what my sermon was all about.